Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Night was falling on New York, and the streets shone under the yellowed streetlights, like lanterns suspended above the misery. The icy wind whipped the sidewalks, carrying with it the dirty papers and scattered memories of thousands of forgotten lives. Among them, a young girl walked slowly, her frail body curled up in a coat too big for her. Her name was Emily Carter, 19 years old, her pale blue eyes reflecting the fatigue of weeks, months, of struggling to survive. Her brown hair was matted, and her lightly tanned skin was marked by cold and hunger. Since her teenage years, she had lost her family, her home, and every day was a battle to find a little food, a warm place to sleep, or simply a human smile. That evening, she stood outside a chic restaurant, her trembling hands clutching an empty plastic bag. The elegant customers filed out laughing, luxury bags in hand, oblivious to the misery lurking just feet away. Emily practically crawled along the icy sidewalks, picking up scraps, hoping just for a scrap of bread or a piece of discarded fruit. Then the sound of an engine caught his attention. A black car with tinted windows pulled up in front of the restaurant. The door opened, and a man in a suit stepped out with a bearing that commanded respect. James Harrington, 42, a millionaire, discreet philanthropist, and influential businessman, stepped out of his car. Every gesture exuded power and confidence, and yet, tonight, he didn't just notice the city around him. His eyes fell on Emily. She raised her head timidly, her trembling lips barely articulating. "Excuse me. I haven't eaten anything for a long time, just a little food, please." James stared at her for a moment, surprised by her audacity, by her fragility. But just as he was about to look away, his attention was caught by a thin metal bracelet, engraved with an ancient symbol, on Emily's ankle. His fingers tightened slightly. This symbol, he knew it. It belonged to a charity, a network for missing children he had supported but thought had been forgotten for years. In that suspended moment, chance seemed to turn into destiny. James felt his heart beat faster. This girl wasn't just a hungry stranger. She held the key to a forgotten story, perhaps to a past that concerned him personally. Without thinking, he took out his wallet and handed Emily a bill. But instead of accepting it, he made an unexpected gesture. "Come, inside. Eat first, and we'll talk later." Emily, surprised, initially stepped back, wary. But fatigue, hunger, and a glimmer of human warmth she hadn't felt in a long time won out. She nodded. For the first time in a long time, she felt that tonight wouldn't be like the others. And in that small gesture, under the lights of the city that never sleeps, an insignificant detail for many would trigger an irreversible chain of events. The restaurant, luxurious and warm, stood in stark contrast to the icy cold outside. The walls were adorned with modern paintings, and the scent of fine food hung in the air like a cruel reminder to Emily of what she had never known. But James gently guided her to a secluded table, away from the prying eyes of the customers. "Sit down," he said in a calm but firm voice. "I'll order you something hot." Emily hesitated. She wasn't used to such kindness. Most people avoided her, ignored her, or looked at her with contempt. But something in James's gaze reassured her. Perhaps it was his calmness, or the way he observed her without judgment. James signaled to the waiter, ordering a full meal: soup, meat, vegetables, warm bread, and dessert. Emily stared at him, her eyes wide. Each course that arrived seemed unreal. For the first time in weeks, she felt like hunger could be forgotten, if only for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. James smiled discreetly and glanced at Emily's bracelet. The small metal symbol, almost invisible to anyone else, intrigued him. He remembered now, the bracelet belonged to a missing children's aid network, an initiative he had secretly supported years ago. And that network had recently been threatened by dangerous individuals. A thought suddenly occurred to him: what if this girl was more than just homeless? What if she was connected to some long-forgotten case? Emily, meanwhile, was trying to eat, but nervousness made each bite difficult. She'd grown up learning to distrust strangers, and yet there was something about this man that inspired confidence. She wanted to ask questions, to learn more about this man who had just reached out to her when no one else had. James watched every move, every hesitation. He knew he had to proceed with caution. This encounter, though seemingly ordinary, could change both of their lives. "Emily," he began softly, after a few moments of silence, "you're wearing this bracelet. Can you tell me where it's from?" Emily jumped slightly, then looked down at her wrist. The symbol shone in the light. She never thought anyone would notice. "It's an old memory," she murmured. "I didn't think anyone would recognize it." James's heart sank. Everything was lining up. The memories, the details, the forgotten network. Everything pointed to a truth he'd never dared hope to find again. This simple meal, which had begun as a spontaneous act of kindness, gradually became the starting point of a race against time, a series of events where every second counted. And in Emily's mind, a mixture of fear and hope began to form. Maybe this encounter wasn't a coincidence. Maybe she had finally found someone who could change her life. The meal was drawing to a close, and Emily had barely dared to eat half. Each bite was a mixture of pleasure and wariness. She wasn't used to receiving so much attention. James, however, was watching her reactions closely. It wasn't simply hunger he saw in her eyes, it was the exhaustion of months of survival, the loneliness and silent pain she had carried for too long. "Emily," he said softly, "I can't let you go back outside tonight, not in this cold." Emily blinked in surprise. I don't want to disturb," she murmured. James shook his head. "You're not bothering me. You just need help. And I can help you." He stood up and gestured towards the exit. "Come with me. I'll show you a safe place where you can eat, rest, and just be yourself for a while." Emily hesitated, her survival instincts telling her to be wary. But something in James's eyes, his calm, firm voice, convinced her to follow him. They left the restaurant and walked a few blocks to a small black car parked in the shadows. The luxury of the exterior contrasted with the warmth emanating from the man in the driver's seat. "Get in," said James. "I'll take you somewhere." In the car, Emily said nothing. Her hands were clenched in her lap, and her mind was racing. Who was this man? Why was he offering her help? And most importantly, why did this bracelet seem so important to him? The drive was silent, punctuated only by the sound of windshield wipers against the light rain that had begun to fall. James, however, was thinking quickly. The symbol on Emily's bracelet corresponded to an organization he had co-founded years ago, dedicated to protecting missing or vulnerable children. And now, here he was, a young girl wearing that symbol, living on the streets, and possibly in danger. They finally arrived in front of a small, discreet apartment, secure and warm. James showed Emily inside and left the door behind her. The room smelled of warmth, security, and comfort, everything Emily hadn't felt in a long time. "Sit down," he said, pointing to a comfortable armchair. "You can stay here as long as you like. I'll make you something to eat." Emily sat up slowly, still reeling from the generosity. She looked around in wonder, soft blankets, a soft light, and the promise of a hot meal. For James, this was a crucial moment. He had to quickly discover if Emily was connected to something greater, and above all, protect her before others discovered the secret of her bracelet. This simple act of kindness had just turned into an emergency. He had to act quickly, and cautiously. Emily, for the first time in months, felt a spark of hope. Maybe tonight wasn't just a fluke, maybe someone had finally noticed that she mattered. Emily finally sat up, her hands clenched in her lap, and looked around the apartment with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Every detail seemed incongruous after months of sleeping on cardboard boxes and searching for food. Shelves full of books, a comfortable sofa, soft lighting, it was almost unreal. James, however, never took his eyes off his bracelet. He knew that this simple symbol was not just a piece of jewelry, it was the key to an ancient case, forgotten by most, but never by him. He took a deep breath and approached slowly. Emily, this bracelet, do you know what it is? Emily looked down. She stroked the cold metal with her fingers, hesitant. It's a memory, from when I was little. I didn't think anyone would recognize it. She whispered. James felt his heart beat faster. It was no coincidence, the symbol belonged to the Missing Children's Network, an organization he had co-founded in his youth to protect vulnerable children. But in recent years, the network had been compromised by dangerous individuals. And now Emily wore that symbol, alive, alone, on the streets. Emily, he said softly, this bracelet, this symbol, it's rare. Very rare. It could identify you as someone we've always been looking for. Emily Frissana. Searched. For what? To protect you. But there are people who want to use this network for dangerous purposes. And I think you're in danger, James said, his voice deep. Emily's eyes widened. She'd never heard of a danger greater than life on the streets. But there was something in James's gaze that made her believe his words. Why me? She asked, almost whispering. Because you wear this bracelet, and this bracelet isn't just a piece of jewelry. It represents protection, a promise we made long ago. And I believe you're part of that story, Emily. You're connected to something bigger than you can imagine. A silence fell. Emily felt her heart race. Every word James spoke resonated within her, revealing a past she had never understood, and a truth she had never suspected. James approached and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'll protect you. But you have to trust me. Everything I know, I'll show you. Emily nodded slowly. For the first time in months, she felt someone saw beyond her situation, someone who could change her life. And in that budding trust, the beginnings of a bond formed between the homeless girl and the millionaire who had just spotted her on the street. This secret revealed was only the beginning. The real emergency would soon strike, and every decision made from now on could change their destiny forever. James had just finished speaking to Emily when his phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at it quickly, a cryptic message from one of his most trusted contacts. His heart immediately sank. Network threat. Risk to child identified. Act immediately. He understood immediately, Emily was in danger. The mere fact that she was wearing the bracelet had alerted malicious individuals seeking to exploit the network for their own gain. Every minute counted now. Emily, he whispered, taking a deep breath. Listen to me carefully. You can't stay here. It's not safe. Emily, already upset by the revelation of her bracelet's secret, felt her stomach clench. Not sure? She asked, her voice trembling. But I know, James interrupted, gently but firmly. I understand. But these people, they'll stop at nothing to find you. We have to hurry. He stood up and quickly began gathering his things, warm clothes, a few personal items Emily could take with her, and important documents for her protection. The urgency in his actions was palpable. This was no longer a simple kindness or a free meal at a restaurant, this was about saving a life. Emily, despite her fear and confusion, allowed herself to be guided. Every step through the apartment seemed to weigh heavily. The outside world, which she knew all too well for its daily dangers, suddenly seemed even more cruel and merciless. Where are we going? She finally asked, her voice betraying concern. Somewhere you'll be safe, James replied. And trust me, no one will be able to find you there. Within minutes, they were out of the building, Emily huddled in her coat as James locked the door behind them. The black car was waiting, silent and imposing, ready to take them away from imminent danger. During the journey, James was thinking fast. He had to plan every step, where Emily would be protected, who could help them, and how they could outwit their pursuers. The danger was real, and time was their enemy. Emily, meanwhile, stared out the window, her heart pounding. She didn't understand all the details, but she felt one thing clearly: this moment, this encounter, had just changed her life forever. And as the pouring rain hit the windshield, James knew that what had started as a simple act of kindness was now turning into a race against time to save Emily. The car stopped in front of an inconspicuous building, nestled on a quiet street, away from the hustle and bustle of New York City. James gently ushered Emily inside. The place was safe, warm, and surprisingly welcoming, a small, tastefully furnished apartment, with clean blankets and lamps casting a soft, reassuring light. "You can stay here as long as you need," James said reassuringly. "No one will come looking for you." Emily looked around in amazement. Every detail was a stark contrast to the cold, cruel streets she had known. The warmth, the order, the calm, it all seemed unreal. "Is it, for me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, for you," James replied with a slight smile. "You need a safe place. And that's exactly what you'll get here." Emily sat on the couch, wrapped in a warm blanket. For the first time in months, she felt her shoulders relax. Her heartbeat began to slow, and the intense fear that had gripped her for so long began to give way to a new feeling, safety. James watched her silently, weighing his words. He knew he needed to build trust before revealing more about the bracelet and the impending danger. "Emily," he said finally, "you have nothing to fear here. But I have to be honest with you. That bracelet you're wearing, it ties you to something very important. And some people would try to exploit you if they knew about it." Emily looked down at her wrist, stroking the bracelet with her fingers. I didn't know, it was so important," she whispered. "It's not your fault," James said, sitting down across from her. "You did what you could to survive. Now my job is to protect you and help you understand who you really are." A silence fell, but it wasn't heavy. It was filled with a dawning intimacy, a quiet understanding that, for the first time in a long time, Emily wasn't alone. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice weak but sincere. "For all of this." James nodded, a mixture of determination and compassion in his eyes. "We're going to discover a lot about your past, Emily. But for now, rest. Tomorrow, we'll begin to unravel the mystery behind this bracelet." As Emily sank back onto the couch, feeling the warmth of the blanket and the weight of exhaustion lift, James looked at her with renewed conviction. He would do anything to protect her, and every decision he made from now on would be guided by that promise. In this temporary refuge, a glimmer of hope was born. Emily was no longer just a homeless girl, she was a survivor who had just found an unexpected ally in the kind-hearted millionaire. The next morning, the sun filtering through the curtains gently lit the apartment. Emily, still wrapped in a blanket, watched the room with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The day before had been shocking, and James's revelations were playing over and over in her head. James, sitting across from her with a hot cup of coffee, broke the silence. "Emily, if you really want to understand this bracelet and what it means, you have to tell me your story. Everything. Every detail you remember." Emily took a deep breath, her fingers stroking the symbol engraved on the bracelet. Memories she'd buried for years were beginning to resurface, along with their share of pain and nostalgia. "When I was little," she began, her voice trembling, "I was with my family. But something happened. My mother died, my father disappeared, and I found myself alone." James listened attentively, without interrupting. Every word reinforced his conviction that this young girl wasn't just a victim of the streets, she had a direct link to the missing children's network he had founded. "After that," Emily continued, "I had to survive on my own. I slept in parks, found food wherever I could. I did what I could to stay alive. But I never forgot that bracelet. My mother gave it to me before everything fell apart." James felt a lump form in his throat. Every detail, every word, every memory confirmed what he suspected. Emily was connected to an old case, a mystery he thought had been lost for years. And now she was before him, vulnerable but alive, carrying the symbol that could reveal the truth. "Emily," he said softly, "what you carry isn't just a memory. It's a key. A key to protect you and perhaps, to find those who lost you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt there was someone who could understand her, someone who could help her rebuild her life. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything right now," James replied. "Just stay here, be safe. And soon, we'll discover together what this bracelet really means." As Emily sat, lost in her memories, James pondered what to do next. He knew danger was never far away, and that others might seek to exploit this story. But he was prepared to do anything to protect her. In that fragile moment, a bond began to form between them, a nascent trust, fragile but decisive. Emily was no longer alone, and James understood that his role went far beyond mere protection. He would become her guide, her ally, and perhaps her only chance of survival. Since yesterday, James hadn't slept a wink of sleep. Every detail about Emily's bracelet, her past, and the warning messages he'd received was running through his head. He knew he had to act quickly to protect the girl, but also to understand exactly who she was and why she wore this precious symbol. While Emily was still asleep on the couch, James got to work. His desk was covered with documents, computer files, and old photos. Every contact he knew in the missing children network was called or consulted quietly. He didn't want to arouse suspicion. "This bracelet," he muttered to himself, "there must be files associated with it." Searching through the archives, he found old documents, letters, reports, and photos of missing children, all protected by secret codes. Then, after hours of painstaking research, he came across a file marked with a symbol identical to the one on Emily's bracelet. His heart leaped. The file contained information about a missing family, with photos of a little girl who bore an uncanny resemblance to Emily. Handwritten notes indicated that she had been separated from her parents at a young age and that her bracelet should be kept as proof of her identity. "It's her," James breathed. "Emily Carter, it's you." He felt a mixture of relief and urgency. The information also revealed that some malicious people were looking for this key, this bracelet, to exploit or manipulate Emily for dangerous purposes. Every minute counted to ensure her safety. When Emily woke up, James looked at her seriously but gently. "Emily, there's something you need to know. This bracelet, it doesn't just protect you symbolically. It connects you to your past, and some people might want to use it against you." Emily felt a lump form in her throat, a fear she had never known. "Do people want to hurt me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," said James, "and I have to make sure you're protected before they find out who you really are. We'll have to be careful and quick." Emily looked down, trembling but aware of the significance of this situation. For the first time, she understood that her past wasn't just a series of isolated misfortunes. Someone, somewhere, knew her true identity and might be hunting her down. James gently took her hand. "I won't leave you alone. We'll find out who's trying to find you and why. But for now, you need to stay here, safe." As the rain continued to fall gently outside, a quiet but palpable tension filled the apartment. Emily was no longer just a homeless woman. She had become the key to an ancient mystery, and James knew the race against time had only just begun. The pouring rain on the windows created an almost surreal atmosphere in the secure apartment. James sat at his desk, checking the contacts and reports one last time. His intuition told him that danger was not far off. And he was right. Shortly after, his phone vibrated. A brief, anonymous message appeared. "We know where she is. Don't hide." James felt his stomach clench. It was clear, someone was watching Emily. Simply wearing that bracelet, an ancient and rare symbol, had attracted the attention of dangerous individuals. Every second counted. He turned back to Emily, who had just come down into the living room, a little more rested after her night. "Emily," he said calmly but firmly, "we have to go. Now. This message shows we are no longer alone." Emily felt a cold fear pass through her. "Leave? But, where are we going?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "To a safe place," James explained. "And we can't leave any traces behind us." James quickly gathered his essentials, clothes, important documents, and a secure phone. he checked one last time that all the doors were locked and that the apartment couldn't be easily monitored. "Listen to me, Emily," he continued, "you must trust me completely. What happens now may be frightening, but I will never leave you alone." Emily nodded, her heart pounding. She realized the situation was much more serious than she'd imagined. This wasn't just a matter of surviving on the streets anymore, her life was at stake. James took a last breath and held out his hand. "Come on, we're leaving." As they left the apartment, James couldn't help but glance furtively around them. Every sound, every movement on the street made him think of a possible threat. The race against time had just begun. In the silence of the night, with the rain enveloping them, Emily felt a mixture of fear and confidence. Fear because the danger was real and imminent, confidence because James was by her side. And as the city glowed dimly under the streetlights, James knew their escape would be the first step in a battle to protect Emily and uncover the whole truth about her past. James drove through the damp, dark streets of New York, the rain pounding against the windshield like a relentless drum. Emily sat beside him, staring out the window, trembling but silent. The message he'd received the day before and the tension in the air had turned the drive into a race against time. "Emily," James said in a calm but determined voice, "we're going to have to leave the city for a few days. What we're doing now may seem extreme, but it's necessary for your safety." Emily, still in shock, whispered, "Leave the city? But I never had a home, and now, you're taking me even further away." James gently took her hand. "I know it's scary, but trust me, I'll never leave you alone to face those who are looking for you. It's not just for your safety, it's for your life." They drove for several hours, changing routes several times to avoid any possible surveillance. James had planned a safe haven in a nearby town, a discreet place where no one would think to look for a young girl wearing a particular bracelet. Once they arrived, James guided Emily inside an isolated house, equipped to be completely self-sufficient, reinforced security system, provisions for several days, and a comfortable place where she could rest in peace. "We're here," he said finally, "no one will be able to find you here. You're safe." Emily, sitting on the plush sofa, felt a mixture of emotion and relief wash over her. Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving me." James smiled slightly, a mixture of determination and compassion in his eyes. "This is just the beginning, Emily. We still have a lot to discover about your past and what this bracelet truly represents. But for now, you need to rest." As Emily let go, feeling calm for the first time in months, James stood there, vigilant. He knew the threat was never far away, but he had done everything possible to ensure her immediate safety. In this temporary refuge, a strong bond began to form between them, a mixture of trust, protection, and hope. Emily was no longer alone. And James understood that from now on, every decision he made would be guided by a single mission, to protect Emily, no matter the cost. A few weeks had passed since James had taken Emily away from New York. In the safe haven, the young girl had begun to rebuild herself. The walls, once strange and intimidating, had now become a place of comfort and safety. For the first time in a long time, Emily slept soundly, without fear. James had cared for her, but not just with material things. He had listened to her, encouraged her, and helped her come to terms with her past. Little by little, Emily was regaining her self-confidence, and a glimmer of hope shone in her eyes once again. One morning, as she watched the sunrise from the window, James came in with an envelope. "Emily," he said, "it is time you knew the whole truth." He held out the envelope. Inside, documents, letters, and photos detailed her family's history. Her bracelet wasn't just a keepsake, it was a key to proving her identity and connecting her to a network of protection created for her. The lost little girl she had once been had a place in a world waiting for her, and James had been the one who found her. Emily leafed through the documents with tears in her eyes. Every word, every photo revealed a past she thought lost forever. But instead of pain, she now felt strength and a new determination. "Thank you," she whispered to James, her voice trembling but filled with gratitude. You saved me, not just from the streets, but from oblivion. James smiled. No, Emily. You saved yourself. I only helped you find the way. Over time, Emily found balance. She continued her education, found a job, and participated in programs to help other troubled youth. The bracelet, once a symbol of danger and mystery, was now a symbol of rebirth and hope. And even though the past had been painful and the path strewn with pitfalls, Emily understood that every encounter, every detail, had led to this new beginning. Thanks to James and that providential chance on the street, she was no longer just a homeless girl, she had become a strong young woman, aware of her worth and ready to face the future. The mystery of the bracelet had been solved, the danger averted, and a new life had begun. Emily had finally found her place in the world.